Hello, and welcome to Benny's Alternate Universe. Back once again with another cassette review, hanging out in our location here underground in Connecticut. Feeling kind of jaunty today. Got my jaunty top hat, and the reason why I'm feeling so jaunty is we're listening to The Cure today from 1985, The Head on the Door. This is an album that I got not too long ago. A few weeks, I guess, from a friend of mine, Sean. What's going on out there? Hope you're watching and enjoying that beautiful California weather. My history with The Cure is like a little disjointed. I had a girlfriend when I was younger who was a big Cure fan, so I used to hear The Cure a lot, and I like them. Certainly never had a problem with The Cure. They were never one of my top bands. During that time, I listened to Staring at the Sea a lot, which is a great album, compilation of their early singles. And then a little later on in my life, when I was about 30, I was getting really heavily into British post-punk, and of course goth is a part of that. Big Susie and the Banshees fan, and Robert Smith actually played with Susie for a while, and I got into The Cure's really super goth early albums, 17 Seconds, Faith, Pornography. Pornography still, I think, has the most goth opening line of any album. It doesn't matter if we all die. Great stuff. But I was not a hardcore Cure head. Of course, I had Disintegration. It's a great album. But I never heard the album Head on the Door. And I gotta say, I popped this in just to hear something different, because mostly I listen to rock, and I rock out with my classic rock, thrash metal, punk rock, and what have you. So I popped in the Cure tape, and what a great surprise. I've been listening to it heavily ever since for several weeks now, and I finally dug in to take some notes and really tear this thing apart. But the thing that I learned and also noticed about this particular Cure album is this is when they made the transition from being super goth to a little poppier, little danceable, a little more danceable. They always had sort of that like club dungeon thing going where sometimes they had danceable tracks, but this is much more upbeat, lighter, and great album. Reached number 59 in the US, number 7 in the UK, which is a pretty good slot, and these were their highest chart positions to date as of 1985, so it was kind of a breakthrough for them. It was their first album with drummer Boris Williams, and I mention that because the drums on here are really fantastic. A lot of great playing, and also a nice mix of electronic and acoustic drums. I'm not sure if he was using triggers or drum machines or what have you. But it's pretty cool sound palette for the drums. Melody Maker named this the best album of 1985. And this was the first album that was entirely written by Robert Smith. So the album kicks off with the song In Between Days, which is just a great single from The Cure. It's kind of their dreamy, jangly type of sound that they do so well. And to me, it sounds very similar to what would become one of their biggest hits, Friday I'm in Love, a few years later. So really nice way to start the album. Then they go into the Kyoto song, which the Kyoto is some kind of string instrument that's used in Japan and Eastern music. And that's what's on right now. And as you can hear, it's very mysterious. Has a lot of those 80s gated drums, gated reverbs on the drums, which in this case works really good. This is an album, and some of their previous albums too, where they use space. They use space as an element, which I always love because you can hear the interlocking parts on the instruments, and they have a great palette of sounds on this album. Some 80s records get bogged down, and I think the 80s, when you lump it into a decade format, which I don't really like to do, is known for kind of like cheesy sounds. But some of these sounds work quite well when they're in the right hands, and The Cure is great for arranging the different keyboards that they have at their disposal, and in this case, the auxiliary instruments, the Kyoto. Very mysterious vocal on this one, very seductive. Robert Smith, I think, is a great singer. I know for some people his voice is a little grating, and I have my singers that I feel that way about too, but Robert Smith is not one of them, and he demonstrates a lot of range on this album, both in his writing and his singing styles. After the Kyoto, we have sort of a Latin and flamenco flavor on the song The Blood. A lot of exotic synth sounds. I think this song is about vampire love. I could be wrong. There's certainly none more goth and more romantic than The Cure. So it could be about vampire love. He says he's paralyzed by the blood of Christ. I don't know what that means exactly. I'm picturing some kind of unholy demon that cannot touch sacramental wine for whatever reason. And it's a cool song. It's a great song to dance to. A lot of good dance tunes on here, and I was dancing to it a little bit this morning, just getting fired up. I did a lot of listening and research on the album yesterday, but I never did make the episode, so I'm doing it now. And I think you can tell in the morning I'm a little more perky, because I'm a very moody person. And so maybe that will make the review more enjoyable. Maybe not. I don't know. Maybe you prefer a more laconic kind of delivery on the review. But very few people watch the show anyway, so if you contact me, I want to thank everybody who's been leaving their comments on the Facebook page, by the way, but if you want to comment right here on the video, you could do that too. I guess it doesn't really matter either way. But the point is, if you want changes, there's a good chance I'll make them, because why the hell not? Hit me up. Then after The Blood, it's one of my very favorite Cure songs ever. Possibly my favorite Cure song. I don't know. It's called 6 Different Ways, and this is the highlight of the album for me because of the interlocking parts. Beautiful pop melody. His vocal is so great on this one. He does more of his like vulnerable style that he does sometimes, a breathy style. It's some kind of love song. I don't know. I mean, his lyrics are always a little vague, but the way that the parts work together with that stuttering drum beat, different keyboards, all playing pretty sparse, reminds me of almost Prince or one of my favorite bands, The Cars. There's just a great attention to detail on this song, and really all over the album. The production is superb. Damn, that reminds me, I forgot to bring out my ducks. I did locate 10 ducks, but I had to give them a reassignment to different aspects of the album that we look for, but that's okay. The side ends with the instrumental Push, which is a very good instrumental. The guitars remind me a little bit of U2 from that time period, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's a nice instrumental, possibly filler, but good tune as far as guitar instrumentals go. It's just a little basic. And then flipping over to side 2, we kick off with the Baby Screams, which is to me, very 80s club sound. You got the drum machine, thrill up beat, and I wrote that this is a kind of song that you might hear on Goth Talk. Those of you who remember Goth Talk, a friend of mine mentioned that the other day on SNL. Azrael Abyss. This is the kind of stuff he would listen to, that dark, dungeon techno or 80s club track. It's like a club track, but for a dark and scary goth club. So, pretty cool tune. I enjoyed it quite a bit. Great to dance to, and I do dance sometimes in my apartment. It's good for your health and your mental health and well-being, I think, especially when you do it first thing in the morning. When you're under quarantine from coronavirus and constantly concerned about your health and your economic status, you gotta just dance sometimes. Just throw on your favorite tapes and put on your Madonna and just get it on. Another highlight of the album comes after this, the song "Close to Me." Definitely one of the best Cure tunes. Awesome arrangement on this with the mellow organ and an even more intimate vocal from Robert Smith. Really nice vocal on this love song. It starts with the drums in what I described as a footloose beat. It's also kind of similar. This is my favorite song, Six Different Ways. It's also kind of similar to George Michael's Faith. And there was a lot of great music going on, mainstream music in the 80s. So, in addition to all the great underground music like The Cure and what have you, bands like INXS, George Michael, Madonna, I think we're doing good stuff around this time too. It's just a different vibe, It's more carefree. On that note, the next song, A Night Like This, is extremely serious, dark goth rock, and I would describe this really as the most rock tune, but not in the sense that it's going to make you bang your head. It's a brooder. I was having the thought as I listened to it, like, was this The Cure's concession to 80s radio rock, hair rock, and were they trying to get a single out of this? I hear some much better singles, and the actual singles were Close to Me, which is a classic, I think, among Cure fans, and In Between Days. So both Cure classics. Good calls on those. Not really sure how A Night Like This fits into the overall vibe of the record. However, it is a very good song, very emotional and affecting. Has an awesome sax solo, which you don't really hear that much anymore. And the 80s production thing, for me, it's a combination of nostalgia, genuine enjoyment of hearing these different timbres that you don't really hear anymore because it's more synth-oriented back then. And, of course, there is a little bit of irony in there when you hear that sax solo and you think about Miami Vice. And but still, it puts a smile on your face. I love this song so much. The drum fills, everything about it. Six Different Ways by The Cure. Awesome tune. Following A Night Like This on side 2 is a song called Screw. Which is super funky bass line coming in at the beginning from Simon Gallup, who had just returned on bass, and he played on a lot of their super goth, classic goth records, Pornography, 17 Seconds, all the ones I mentioned before. And he's flexing on this one. He's flexing like a mofo with that bass line. There's some Eastern scales going on again, a lot of Eastern flavors. Robert Smith said that he wanted this album to be similar to Kaleidoscope by Susie and the Banshees. And for those of you who are goth heads, I can definitely hear it. What a great album that was. And this was around the time that he was playing with Susie Sue, and with the Banshees. And great time for goth in 1985. The final track on the album, Sinking, kind of harkens back to their earlier super gothed out sound. It's a droner, goes on. This is really my least favorite track on the album. Not that I don't like that style, but this is not the album I would put on when I wanted to hear that style. I think out of all their goth records, Pornography is my favorite. It's very, very dark, super gothic. And when I differentiate between their goth records and what came after, of course they're always going to be gothic. It's The Cure. Their image is very well known, and their lyrics are always going to be a little dark and romantic, mysterious, dangerous, seductive, all those things that we think of when we think goth. I meant to make a note too about the song Screw. The lyrics are mainly about looking good and dancing, which is definitely a time-honored tradition in British rock a lot, glam rock, goth. You just want to look good sometimes and dance and sing about it. So, having said all that, the last track is not my favorite. And if I had been in charge of this project as opposed to Robert Smith, I'm sure many things would have been different. I think he did a great job. However, I probably would have cut the instrumental push and the final song, Sinking, and just made it an 8-song tight little package, and I probably would have rated it slightly higher. However, having said that, let's get into the ratings. See, I like the tape rating system, but I think it was glossed over a little bit the last episode. These tapes represent different aspects that we look for in an album. And I know it's kind of hard to see. There's a thing with my phone where it only recognizes about 50% of the light in the room, so it's actually much brighter in this room than it appears on your screen. Looks like I got a couple minutes, so we'll go through and explain a little better what all these tapes mean. Okay. First one, this is Van Halen's Fair Warning. This represents attitude. And I think this album has a great deal of attitude. I think Robert Smith is very bold in his singing. And the fact that he sings like kind of wimpy sometimes is a bold choice as well. Robert Smith is an individual who represents Robert Smith through his music. And I love that about him, you know? You don't have to be tough to have attitude. You don't have to like be anti-authority. You just have to have an attitude that you're projecting on this show. And Robert Smith definitely has that in spades. The James Brown tape represents funkiness, and this is a very funky record, as I've stated many times. Great to dance to, very cool. Bob Dylan's Highway 61 is representative of great lyricism, and again, you know, The Cure always have great lyrics. They always have a wonderful longing to their lyrics and a sense of mystery. The High on Fire tape represents heaviness, which I think this album has, especially in the more rockier numbers. Night Like This. The closing track, Sinking, I would say is heavy. The Blood is heavy, a lot of heaviness. Great production is exemplified by Purple Rain, and this album is from the same time and does have great production as well all over, a lot of variety in the production. Classic Yes represents virtuoso playing, or playing of a high caliber, which I think this album definitely has too. A lot of cool ideas going on, a lot of different type of scales. You don't hear that often. Aerosmith's Pump, of course, represents fun. This album is a lot of fun for me, and in the chronology of The Cure, it is their most fun as of to date. They would get more and more into the dance pop side of things as they became more popular throughout the years. The Edge of Rock comp cassette, which I may review, represents originality. The Cure were always a very original band. Very, very great band in terms of being unique. The Chuck Berry Great 28, of course, represents a classic quality. I think this album contains at least 2 classic Cure singles that are well known to all Cure heads in Between Days and Close to You. So I'm going to say it is a classic of goth rock anyway, or of the Cure's catalog. Finally, does it have a great album cover? And of course, there's a lot of great things about Axis, but one of the things that makes it great is its cover. I'm going to say no, because the cover was not that cool, and the classic is little in dispute, and I'm running out of time. So I'm going to give the album 9 tapes. You can translate that to 9 ducks if you wish. Thank you for joining me for this period of time. Benny's Old